Hello, it's time for another video from Hit Songwriter Meets AI. I'm Bill Padley and you're very welcome. Well, what can I tell you about today's video except that it's incredibly special? It's a preview of something which is literally just been released. I've been privileged enough to have used this over the last 10 days to 2 weeks. And I'm talking about something which is a big change to a program I talk a lot about, and in fact used it quite extensively only in our last video. I'm talking about Suno, and I'm specifically talking about Suno Studio. And today we're going to have a look at the brand new Suno Studio 2. Yes, Suno Studio has been updated. We were using 1.2 before, and it's now a brand new version called version 2. What's different about it? Well, we're not going to go into the old Suno Studio stuff. I'm just going to talk about what has changed. And let me tell you, there's a lot of changes, all of them superb. Where do we start? MIDI, native MIDI built into Studio 2. Playable synths directly in Studio 2 that you can play from your MIDI keyboard, or you can play it from a keyboard on the screen. A brand new chat bar where you can talk with a natural language interaction with your studio session, way broader than the old context bar. We had EQ before, now we've got many more plugins available like reverb and delay and distortion built right in to Suno Studio. And not only that, you can ask the AI to create a plugin for you. Yes. Automation. We can now automate track parameters over time, plugin parameters over time. All brand new stuff. And the stem separation that was introduced a little while ago is now directly inside Suno Studio in a much easier way to control. So we can use the brand new stem separation and directly add it to our tracks. So there's a lot to go through here. And let's start, I guess, at the very beginning by showing you your first glance of Suno Studio version 2 and try and explain what we're looking at. There we are, a brand new interface, as those who are Studio users will know. And let's try and talk round what you're actually looking at here. Well, left to right, as usual, you've got your tracks, but what's this here? This is MIDI for the first time ever in Suno Studio. You can play in your own MIDI. We're going to do that and show you how that works. 2 MIDI tracks there. And down the bottom here, we've got delay, convolution, reverb, and other effects we can add. It looks like a completely different interface, and that's really because it is. So I thought we would start by a very basic look at what's new without anything cluttering up the screen. So let's have a quick tour around the brand new Suno Studio page. A nice blank session there so you can see what's going on. Along the top, we've got our project selector here, which we can load and save projects from. We've got metronome, record, play, the usual stuff, cycle, follow the playhead. We've got our time and our bars and beats, tempo here, time signatures here, our export functions here, and our library over here. And then moving down to the bottom, we got a help section there, a plus and a minus to zoom in and out. That centers the view on the content on the screen. This is a new thing you won't have seen before, playable keyboard. We'll discuss that later, but that basically means if you don't have a MIDI keyboard, you can use your actual keyboard to play stuff on the screen. We'll go into that a bit later on. Following along the bottom, add track effects. That's something you won't have seen before. Then we've got our take lanes, which is where you have more than one alternative for a track that you've generated. Here, our clip editor, which is the same as double clicking a clip. That's moved now down to here. This you won't have seen before, automation. And again, we'll describe that later, but what it basically enables you to do is to take a parameter of either an effect or a synth and automate that in Suno. along the timeline, just as you can in other audio workstations. And the one at the left here again is plugins, which you won't have seen before, but again, we'll go into later. So that's the basic new screen of Suno, and most of the stuff happens on this little bit here, these little stars. If you press those, it opens up this here, which is where you talk to Suno. This is where it's not the same as a style prompt. Okay, this is an instruction area. So in other words, what do you want Suno to do? For example, turn a MIDI track into an audio part, put a delay on a track, change an EQ setting. That's all done from here, where you give it an instruction. Okay, so that's where that happens. You still have the old styles box here. Okay, that's same as before, where you can be very specific about what style you want for a generation, which is exactly where we were before. And as you'll see here, it says the agent folds these styles into generations where they fit the part. They're calling this bit the agent. So if we go to lyrics, we can put those there as well. If we're generating a piece of audio, the agent sings these on any vocal generations. And here's our good old sliders that we had before. Controls, you'll see them there, okay? And if you notice, if we add anything here, it pops up here. And that means the controls have been added to this particular agent's instructions. If we want to get rid of that, we disappear them there. And we'll explain that as we do some examples a bit later on. Down here, you've still got version 5 and version 5.5 as your model numbers. And here you can open the entire conversation here that you've had with the studio agent. So that's the front page of the brand new Suno Studio version 2. So we'll have a look at all of this stuff as we go through. And I thought we'd give some practical examples of how this all works. It's by far the easiest way to do it. So let's load up a session here in Suno Studio that I prepared earlier. And we've loaded up a session here, which I've called Dance Audio, where I'm going to go through some of the new features of Suno Studio with you. So to get audio into Suno Studio, let's start at the beginning. Add a new track. And now look, we have a choice. Audio, MIDI, or upload. Upload, of course, that means that you can use a file on your desktop or in a folder and upload as before. MIDI, you won't have seen, that's brand new. And audio, which we'll pick here, just gives you an audio track which you can drag apart straight from your desktop onto the audio track, which is exactly what I've done up here. So let's have a listen to this little part I brought in, just a simple dancey synth line. Okay, so a bit of audio in there, which is all well and good. We could do that before. That's nothing revolutionary. But then we'll see in the middle of the screen this little box here. And let's click it and see what happens. So what that's basically saying is we have selected that piece of audio. It's called synth. And what do we want to do to it? Well, you'll notice it's prompting me with all kinds of stuff. So you can talk directly here to Suno Studio and type something in. So I could type in, for example, make this into a plucked synth, for example. And it will go off and do that. So we're using language really in a different way to prompt Suno, whereas before we were very much using the style box and pasting in a style. So we're actually talking directly to the generative engine here. So whatever you say in there, it'll try and work out what it is you're actually looking for. You may say, well, where's the old stuff gone? Where's the style box? Where's the control sliders that we had before? If you look at the plus sign here, you've still got a style box, which you can put your style into as before. And you'll see here the agent folds these styles into generations where they fit the part. So the style is something that you want it to adhere to, and then you can give it a prompt based on that style. Lyrics, as before, you can type or paste lyrics. The agent will sing these on vocal generations, never on instrumental parts, and excerpts them for short sections. And here are our sliders now. They're still the same as before: weirdness, style influence, and audio influence, but they are now in a separate box. Now you'll notice, because I've hit plus here, it's added this now, which says controls. That means the controls are part of the prompt now, part of the track in effect. So to get back to them, I just click that, and there are the controls. Does that make sense? So plus, controls, there they are there. If I put plus style and put something in there like, let's say, dance, for example, then the style comes up here. So that's where you now access them, and you can go simply back to them like that. Hope that makes some kind of sense. So this is revolutionary because I use a voice-to-text app on my Mac, which is called Whisper Flow. So I can actually talk now to Suno directly. So I could say, for example, turn this synth track into a super saw analog synthesizer part. Do not change the timing or the chords. Look at that. So that's now in there as an instruction to Suno. And that's exactly what I did to get these two parts underneath here. So let's have a listen. So I basically said, take this part and turn it into a super saw analog synthesizer. And this is what we ended up with. I'll mute the original just for now. And here's our two new parts based on that prompt. That kind of makes sense? Amazing. So I just basically prompted it. So let's try and show you some of these features in action. How did I arrive at these two created synth parts? Let's build them from scratch. Let's first of all kill these tracks so we can show you the process that I used. Delete this one, and we'll delete this one. Okay, I'm going to create a new audio track under this synth track here. I'm going to make a copy of our original synth and drop it down into here by holding down the Alt key. Because what I want to do is to cover this synth part while keeping our original. And I want to prompt Suno to do that for me. So there's the selected track. We go to our middle box here, and I'm going to, ordinarily, you would be typing something in here. But I have to confess, I'm a terrible typist. It takes me forever, and I end up making loads of spelling mistakes. So what I use is an app that converts my voice into text called Whisper Flow, which I highly recommend. And so I can just talk effectively to Suno. So what I'm going to say is this: create a cover of this track using an analog super saw synthesizer sound. Do not change the melody, chords, or timing. There we go. Create a cover of this track using analog super saw synthesizer sound. Do not change the melody, chords, or timing. Now that's a quite vague prompt in terms of analog super saw synthesizer sound. So we can use what we used to do. In other words, use the style box to create a very specific prompt. So I can go up to styles and I can prompt it with super saw synth chords, dense, stacked, detuned, sawtooth voices, etc., etc., etc. So that is now the style, which you'll see has now appeared here. We've got our controls, which I'm going to just leave at default for the moment. Remember, that's this. And so we've asked it to create a cover using those control settings with that style. And let's see what happens. So what it should do is take this here and start to build a track based on a cover of it, which should match our track above. But you see, the brilliant thing there is I actually just prompted Suno basically in words, which is fantastic. So whatever you think, you can type, or in my case, speak to Suno rather than having to try and explain it with a complex prompt. So let's see, it will come up with two alternatives, as it always has in the past. They appear in a slightly different way. You'll see up here, this new box has appeared. That commits to the timeline. This one kills the whole thing. and that moves between the two takes. So let's wait till it finishes the takes. And there we go, created 2 analog super saw covers of the selected track, preserving its melody, chords and timing. The first is previewing. We can either commit the first take or listen to the second take. Let's mute the original up here so we can hear what's going on. That's muted. And let's listen to this first part that it's generated. Very good, that's pretty good. And number 2, I can see that one's moved slightly, sometimes a problem, but it can easily move it back. Let's have a listen to it. That's lovely, that's the one I'm going to use. So what I do here is I hit either here, commit to timeline, or commit take 2. Done. Now I can just move that start to where I know that it should be, and that is our new part here. Lovely. And let's listen to them both together. Brilliant. And let's maybe pan one to the right and pan our original to the left. Give a nice stereo vibe. Excellent. So we've created a part by prompting Suno simply by typing something into here. We've used our old style prompt here and the controls, but you see how easy that is to generate something. Now, you'll notice here it says add a warm reverb to this track. It's suggesting stuff we can do, which is amazing. We can basically talk to Suno. So I could say to Suno, thin this track out with EQ, for example. So let's try that. Thin this track out using EQ. And hit send. So Suno should go away. There we go, inspected the audio track. It's now looking at its plugins. It's added an EQ to the track. It's looking at the EQ on the track, and look at that. It's rolled off the bottom end. Thin the selected synth track with EQ, high pass below 160, and trim the low mid build up around 220. So I've basically prompted Suno, and I haven't touched that EQ myself. There we go. Fantastic, huh? So that's just amazing. Now, we've seen EQ before in Suno, but you'll notice down here, add effect. Let's see what else we've got. Ignore this one up here for a moment. I'm going to talk about that in just a second. We've now got a compressor. We've got a convolution, which is a type of reverb. We've got a delay, which you can either use as a tempo sync delay or a specific time. We've got distortion, we've got our old EQ, we've got a noise gate, and we've got another reverb here. So for example, if I wanted to add some delay to that track, I just select the delay here. It's now added to the track. If I go to tempo, it will now be synced with the track. I'm going to solo this so you can hear it a little clearer. And this is how many beats the delay would be. Okay, so let's call that 2 beats and play the track now. Put this back in the middle just for you, just so you can hear it. Bit of low cut on it. There we are. So we've added a delay to our track. Let's turn the mix down a little bit. So you can see that we can carry on adding effects here to our heart's content. Bit of distortion maybe. I think you get the idea. So these are Suno's own effects here that you can add, and a little later on we'll show you can also automate the parameters of these effects. So quite a lot to take in, I know, already in this video, but hopefully it's beginning to make some sense that this is becoming much more now of a creative producer musician tool than it was before. And the ability to prompt it just by typing stuff in here is amazing. Now, I said I'd just show you up here, I had something called stereo motion. That didn't come with Suno. What am I talking about? Well, I wanted a flanger or a chorus for a project I was doing. And I thought, oh, I haven't got one inside Suno. So this is what I said. Please generate a new plugin providing flanging and chorus. Right? So I'm asking Suno to build a plugin. And let's see what happens. I can build a new modulation effect, stereo chorus, pro zero sol flanger with rate, feedback, delay, and mix controls. Build it. Yes, please. This is mind-blowing. So Suno is now creating a plugin from scratch to what I've just asked it to do. Getting ready to build a plugin, opening the workshop. And this is amazing stuff. It's literally building a plugin in front of our eyes. Writing the code now. And finally compiling it. A bit of a test audio going through it. Done it. It's called it Lush Motion. Is ready. A smooth chorus to flanger effect with mode, rate, depth, delay, feedback. Drag onto a track. Well, I'm going to drag that there. And here is our new plugin from scratch. This plugin did not exist before. And there it is. Chorus, a blend of the two, or a flanger. That's amazing. So I've just basically built a chorus and a flanger by simply asking Suno to do it. Mind-blowing. And by the way, now that plugin is available for anything we do in the future. If we go to Add Effect, we will see that now Lush Motion is now under My Plugins. So that's what we've created. And you can do one from scratch up here as well if you wish to. Really extraordinary. So let's have a look at some of the MIDI capabilities of the new Studio version 2. We're on a new session here, and I'm just going to demonstrate a couple of things. Firstly, how you get MIDI into Studio version 2. First of all, we'll add a new track, and there, for the first time, is the option of MIDI. Okay, so we've added a MIDI track, but how can we hear what we are playing? Good point. Well, we can use the built-in synthesizer, which now comes as part of Studio 2. It's called Wavetable. Let's expand it here. And you can see it here. It's a quite basic analog synth, but it's very useful to be able to hear what you're playing in. So if I put this track into record, by the way, here are all my MIDI devices on my Mac. So I've got this set to MIDI input being all devices. So I can just arm this track for record now. And I'm now playing my MIDI keyboard. Okay, so that's just like any other MIDI keyboard connected to a digital audio workstation. You can change this to whatever you like. I've saved some kind of preset sounds up here for myself. So let's just give it, for example, this one here, a piano kind of sound. Okay, so what we can do is we can demonstrate playing stuff into Suno. So we've got a quite slow tempo here, 70 BPM. Let's turn the metronome on. We can have a pre-count here, a count-in of 1 bar, let's call it. Let's put our track back at the beginning here. And let's just play something very basic in. I'm not a keyboard player. I've told you this in my previous demos. I'm a guitar player, but I can play a bit of keyboard. So let's just play it in and show you the kind of thing you can do with Suno's brand new MIDI feature. So let's go into record. There you go. So I played some basic chords into Suno, and that'll play that back, obviously. I did warn you I wasn't a keyboard player. So let's look at that MIDI now, which we can see on the bottom track here. We've now got our MIDI showing down here. That's the parts I've just played. And we can move these notes around as you would with any other DAW. So, and we can shorten them or lengthen them like that. We can move them up and down an octave by hitting Shift and up arrow or Shift and down arrow. You see? And down again. And we can quantize. Down here we've got quantizing in triplets and in normal time signature. We can even force it into various scales should we wish to. Okay? So that's our MIDI, and it's really all you need for the basic stuff. And you can say to yourself, well, that's all well and good, Bill, but why would you even bother putting MIDI into Suno? Well, the reason is because you can then use that MIDI to turn it into audio using Suno's generative audio powers. And this is the killer part of this app. If you use Logic or Ableton or Pro Tools, for example, this is not yet available. They don't do AI as part of it, but you can use Suno's amazing generative powers to turn your MIDI part into audio. Does that make sense? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you a part that I made earlier on and just kind of show you that turning into something amazing. So let's kill this MIDI track for a moment, get rid of it. That's kind of the basic stuff anyway that you've seen here. Also, by the way, worth mentioning is that you can drag and drop MIDI files from your computer straight into a MIDI track in Suno. So if you've exported something maybe from another digital audio workstation, you've exported the MIDI, you can drag and drop it straight into Suno, which is amazing. And then use these generative audio things I was talking about. So let's have a look at this MIDI track I recorded earlier on. It's fairly basic, but I'm not a string player, right? But I know what I want to hear. So this is an approximate string part. Okay, so I've just basically put that into Suno, and what I really want is to turn it into a string part. Let me get rid of the previous version where I was playing around with it. So I'm going to add a new track here. Okay, new audio track, and there it is. And I'm going to take our MIDI part, move all this down now because I don't need to see it in quite such depth. And I'm going to give Suno some instructions. So here's a prompt. Keep the MIDI notes and turn this into audio. Okay, so that's the basic instruction. What do I want? Small string section, intimate chamber ensemble of violins, viola and cello, etc., etc. So I've given it the instruction to use this MIDI and turn it into audio. So let's hit send and see what Suno comes up with. So it will create new tracks and should give me 2 variations based on that brief I just gave it. Created 2 intimate chamber ensemble of violins, viola and cello from the unchanged MIDI notes. And we've got 2 versions. We can either commit take 1 or audition take 2 and do the same up here. This arrow allows us to commit to the timeline. That will dismiss it, and that flicks between the 2 takes. So let's mute the original MIDI and just listen to what Suno has just generated from the MIDI. Fantastic. Let's hear or take 2. Now that to me is mind-blowing because I've now got an authentic sounding string part which sounds like it's been played by a chamber string section just from that basic MIDI part that I played in. So let's commit take 2, which I think I prefer, by doing that. And here's the original MIDI alongside it, so you can hear that it's pretty close. Wonderful. Now that, as I say, could have been imported from Logic or Pro Tools or Ableton or anything else that you may use, Cubase, and just dragged into Suno, and then you generate that incredible string part from it. Wonderful. That's just kind of scratching the surface of what you can do with MIDI in Suno version 2 Studio. And I'm sure you'll agree that really is. I mean, it's said all the time, but that's a game changer. That's using MIDI, which real musicians use all the time indoors, and making that into a generative audio part. And only your imagination is your limitation there. Fabulous. And while we're on this page, let me just show you how creative you can get now using Suno Studio. So here's an audio track which I've just added. That's listening to my microphone, which I'm using to talk to you now. And I told you I wasn't a keyboard player, but I can imagine some lovely parts in my head. And I always used to have to rely on keyboard players to generate those parts for me. Well, now, whatever I can hear, and I can sing, I can get Suno to generate something for me. So let's try and generate, for example, a cello part to go with that lovely string section that we've just done. So that's a mic track. I'm going to record into Suno, and let's see what we can do with it. Okay, so that's me having just sung an audio part. There it is. Okay, so we'll disarm the track for recording. So let's supposing I want that to be played on, let's say, a cello. So I can say to Suno, I'll select the track there. You notice it says audio track. That's the green one there. And I'll say to Suno, using this audio, turn it into a solo cello. Using this audio, turn it into a solo cello, send. And we'll see what happens now. So it should listen to that audio and generate a cello part for us. And as usual, we'll get 2 variations of that part. It says created 2 solo cello takes from the selected audio. So let's solo that. Pretty good. And version 2? Okay, let's commit that one. So we've got it there. And I'm just going to move that down to the next track. This is our original, by the way, that I recorded in. So that's my part there that we recorded in. And let's just move it into place. Sometimes Suno just moves things slightly. So you'll see that's very close to the audio that I sung into Suno. It's given me more than I asked for there. It's given me a cello and a bit of a harp part at the end there, but you can use the stem splitter to split that out. Or you can try generating it again, which is always worth trying, and maybe worth trying version 5.0, which sometimes does better than 5.5 with solo tracks. But I hope you kind of get the idea that this has now become a very creative tool for the musician producer. Just starting from MIDI, which I played into Suno, so I didn't even have to leave the workstation. I started with this. Okay, so that's what I started with, and this is what I've ended up with. Let me just mute that, and I'll mute the singing part. So here we go. just before we finish, a couple of things that we didn't cover during the demo, which has been quite long. I hope you've enjoyed it though. If we go over here and add a new track, and in this case we'll add a MIDI track, okay, and arm it for recording. If you don't have a MIDI keyboard, as we used earlier, I used my actual MIDI keyboard, you can come down to the bottom here and press this little key button, and here you have a little playable keys, which you can either play from here, or you can actually use your actual keyboard itself. In other words, your computer keyboard. So there's the notes attached to each of the letters on your keyboard. Okay, and you've got an arpeggiator built into that as well, should you want to use an arpeggiator. So that's for those of you who don't actually have a MIDI keyboard, a very handy little function down there. The other thing we didn't cover while we were talking was the new automation lanes. So for example, if we have a plugin, if we add an effect on this track, let's for example put an EQ on that track. So there's our EQ on the track. And if we want to automate, for example, let's say the frequency that we're sweeping, we can go to the automation part down here. It says here, no automation lanes yet. Right-click a plugin knob and automate to add one. So we can actually right-click the frequency and hit automate. And you'll see now we have an automation lane. We can double-click and add points in the lane. So for example, we could make that frequency sweep from very low to very high. If you watch the frequency here, that's now obeying the automation lane we've just put in. Very powerful and something you're probably used to on other DAWs, but to see it inside Suno is fantastic. So that's hopefully covered most of the new things in Suno. Okay, so I hope that gives you a kind of tour around Suno Studio version 2. It's very early days. There are lots of things that they're working on. This has changed in the 2 weeks I've had it, to be honest with you. And it's only going to get better as models improve and they add new features, new synths, for example, in the MIDI generation. And yeah, I mean, what can I say? The future is incredibly bright. So I hope you've enjoyed our tour around Suno Studio version 2. And thanks to Suno for letting me have a look at this early so I can show it to you today. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel if you've enjoyed it and go to our website to sign up for our courses on Suno and other generative AIs. Thank you for watching. Take care of yourself and we'll see you again next time.